That's the power of human creativity. Everyone has it, but not everyone has flipped the switch. They had rules for how long the socks should be. If you go to work, you have to follow the rules. How many centimeters the socks you are wearing should be. I went to North Korea because I looked at it as the least creative country on the planet, and I wanted to study the least creative country on the planet. And I
Okay.
didn't think I was going to learn anything about creativity from the North Koreans. But
Mm-hmm.
it turned out I got a very good insight in how to think about creativity when I was there. AI is the biggest creativity accelerator that we have ever invented. We just haven't realized it yet, so we're using it in the wrong way. I won't tell you what it was, but I will share that in the workshop.
Let's talk and see.
Okay.
So I don't know if you remember me again or not, but I definitely remember like 30% of the workshop you have conducted. Yes, and
Okay.
that's big, 15 years ago. And
Yeah.
guess what? Seriously, and this was not planned. Look at the corner of my screen. Which
Yes.
book is that? That's yours.
Ah, yeah, look.
And I didn't plan that. I moved my office 4 times in the last 13 years, and this book moves with my desk. This is yours, right?
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, I didn't plan it. Seriously. I have the portion book, I have a couple of books, and I have yours. Uh, yeah, you
Okay,
don't.
I'll bring you one copy of my new book so you can
Ah,
change, you can add to your bookshelf.
thank you so much. That would be a pleasure. I remember when I attended your workshop, Frederick, I remember that day I went back to my kids after your story about, I remember that this is what I'm telling you, I almost remember 30%.
Yeah.
When you told us about that you went in Germany in the swimming pool and you swept, you didn't swim in the lanes because it was sun part and half, of course you remember the story.
Yeah, of course.
And this German guy was so pissed off because you're not swimming in lanes. That day, when I went back home, one of my kids, now they are in college, but back then she was so young, and she was playing with that. I don't know its name in English, but just a plastic piece that you blow in it, and it's like a whistle, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But she was not blowing it. She was using it the other way around, and she was sucking the air and going the same noise, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
My first reaction was, Noor, her name is Noor. And I told her, Noor, you're using it wrong. And then I remembered the pool story that the same day. I told her, you know what? Forget it. The goal
Yeah.
is to play. So you impacted my
Yeah.
life, my kids' life. And I really, really, it's one of the most impactful workshops I ever attended. So thank you again.
Oh, well,
After
thank you
15.
so much. I'm very glad to hear that. I still remember it too. Not, I don't remember 30% of it, but I still remember doing it. It was yeah,
So
yeah, it was fun.
yeah, I remember when you asked us about the what are the places that you get your ideas at, the most ideal
Mm.
places,
Yes.
and you sketched that on a flipboard, and we didn't look at it, and most of us guessed it, and then you flipped the chart, and one of them didn't click because that was the bar, and then you
Yeah,
switched it for cafe in Egypt because we went to
exactly.
bar. So I told you, I remember it was really a great app, and I'm really happy that we're connecting after, I don't know, was that 16, 17 years,
Yeah,
something
something
like
like
that?
that.
Yeah. So excited now after 16 years, and I'm quite sure that your whole experience have been shifted to a whole different level. I remember what you said about Sweden, what you said about the meeting on Nokia and Samsung, when everybody said about innovation and they were copying the line of each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
so let me, the first thing that really now hits my brain is what dramatically shifted in the way you look at thinking. You have always been concerned about creativity and thinking and how the people think. So
Mm.
what is if there is something that dramatically shifted in the last 15, 16 years within your perspective about thinking and ideation?
For me personally, the
Yeah.
biggest shift has been that I now actually I when I redefined myself as the creativity explorer, I said I can't only study the big multinational companies. I need to study creativity everywhere, in every country, every culture, every industry. So I have now broadened my perspective much more on what creativity is, and I interviewed a much broader uh, spectrum of creative people. That's the biggest difference for me. So everything, so the new book that came out, The World of Creativity, it's about lessons from Mongolia, lessons from Thailand, even from North Korea. What can we learn about creativity from the North Koreans? So I really broadened my perspective. I remember one time I was in India and I interviewed the CEO of the Tata Group, the woman in charge of the Indian space program, and the children of the sex workers in the slums of Mumbai on the same day, all on the topic of creativity. And you cannot probably find three people who are lived more different lives than those three people. So
Yeah, I can't think of any, right?
yeah, exactly. So that is my for me the biggest personal difference. And then of course the world has changed a lot.
Yes, a lot in those 15 years. I
Yeah.
remember in your workshop, you showed us an old picture of Sweden and China and a
Hmm.
modern one for Sweden and China.
Yeah.
See, I remember that. And Sweden, the only difference was that tree got bigger or got something like that. While China has changed dramatically, and
Yes.
you said they committed to themselves by defining themselves as developed countries with the ED
Yeah.
as fixed while the others.
Yes.
So in those 15 years, you have been traveling here and there, and you broadened your perspective about creativity from enterprises to different businesses to small.
Mm.
Did you find anything common when it comes to the human breed, the human race, when it comes to creativity, aside all those variances?
Yeah, actually, the more I travel around the world, the less I try to identify the differences. I don't like to compare countries. I actually remember I was in Bhutan and I was interviewing people in Bhutan, but then I interviewed one of the people I was interviewing was a web designer. And you know, Bhutan is like a Buddhist, Shangri-La kind of a country, very green and nature and everything. But then I walk into this web developer and the office looks just like any other web developer in like Stockholm or San Francisco. I actually went to a web developer also in Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia.
Okay.
And they all look the same because a web developer is a web developer regardless where they live. They're just web developers. And I think we are an engineer is an engineer is an engineer, no matter where they are. We are more similar to our professions than we are to our cultures almost. So we need to identify, we have so many different identities that define how we are creative. And we are all creative. And an engineer is just as creative as a dancer or a painter, just in a different way, or an entrepreneur. And I
Okay.
want to understand all kinds of creativity. I want to understand the engineering perspective. I want to understand the Buddhist perspective. I want to understand the artist perspective so that I get this full understanding of human creativity. Because to answer your question, the common thing is it doesn't matter where you go or who you ask, every human being is fascinated and passionate about creativity. That's what makes us human.
True, very true. When I see it through my business and experience, especially when it comes to the enterprises, people sometimes mix the definition of being creative and designers just as an association with the artists.
Yeah.
Because right now, in those 15 years, I've been focusing on innovation. I've been design thinking certified, and I give the courses. And
Mm.
usually in my courses, workshops, the first day I ask, who here consider themselves as designers?
Ah,
And usually in a 30-person workshop, people, ideally one or two maximum, raise their hands that they think they are designers.
yeah.
And then after in 30 minutes, when I de-associate the artistic side of creativity to the broad definition of designers and how it is all about empathy and solving problems, and then I ask again at the end of the workshop, who here thinks they are designers? Most of the workshop, and if not all, raise their hands.
Yeah, that's a good shift. I mean, parents are designers of the next generation, right? Everyone is a designer.
Exactly. And actually, I have a question about that. Have you ever considered to look to the creativity you're saying from different profession and different
Mm.
countries' perspectives? Did you try to check the housewives? Those, because this in the Middle East, we have a lot of ratio of women saying back. And actually, I see this as a trend in the West, especially in the US now, is
Mm.
trending back women back home and men to take care of the family. Have you ever interviewed housewives about creativity? that
Yes,
perspective.
I even interviewed I interviewed housewives and also because I'm very when I got children, I got very passionate about how to raise creative children. So I was
Mm,
interviewing parents and teachers, people who work with children. I even
okay.
interviewed my mom, who was a teacher, and
Interesting. Yeah.
she had a beautiful way of. I asked her, how do you raise a creative child? And
Hmm.
she said, whenever the child asks a question, don't give the answer.
Wow. Can you,
In,
all right, let's dig deeper in that one.
instead, just say, what do you think? Because now you're teaching the child. Every child will ask questions, but creativity is not about being curious. Creativity is being curious and finding the answer. And if the parents are always giving the answer, we are taking that away from our children. So you say, what do you think? Like the child will say, why is the moon round? And parents will start explaining, but they said, just hold back your answer and say, what do you think? Now the child will think about their own answer and they will try to come up with an answer. And then you can give your answer. So you're not hiding the answer, you're postponing giving it. It's the best parenting advice I ever got.
Wow, that is impressive. I do that, but I never did it on purpose. I usually just do
Yeah.
that
No,
because,
no, yeah, that is great. Yeah, but on
yeah, I
purpose.
don't like
It's
to put my
super
kids.
difficult. Most in the beginning, it's very difficult because you have to bite your tongue because you so much want to give the answer, but you say, no, I just actually it also works well on managers. Whenever if you're a manager and the people come to you and with a problem, you say, oh boss, what should I do with this problem? You just turn it around and you say, what do you think? It works there too.
True, very true. Okay, so you've interviewed small companies, entrepreneurships, and large enterprises.
Mm.
Would you say statistically through your interviews that creativity thrives more in the enterprises domain or the small businesses slash entrepreneurship domains?
I The interesting thing is creativity thrives in pockets. And it could be in a small company, but it could also be in pockets in big companies.
Okay.
And there are many, many examples of like I like the example, like there's some Swedish example of, for example, AstraZeneca, which invented Losec, which
Yeah.
was like that project was closed down like I think like a number of times. Also, when Ericsson invented the mobile phone, they closed it down many times. But a small group of people within Ericsson, a small group of people within AstraZeneca, they said we can't close this down. We have to do it anyway, and they just continued like on the side. They found a budget somewhere and they did it. So I don't think big companies versus small companies. I look for innovative pockets of or pockets of creative people, and what is that saying? Uh, something like this. Never underestimate the power of a small group of passionate people to create change. Actually, that's the only kind of change that is ever created. Like a small group of passion, and they can be anywhere. They can be in a startup, but they can also be within a big organization. They can be in government. They can be anywhere.
I like that. You defined it really meticulously, like creativity thrives in pockets.
Mm.
So if a small company is a pocket by definition, that means it can thrive, but enterprises, if they allow it.
Yes, and I also I was interviewing at people at Nova Nordisk, which is one of the most highly valued European companies, and they were talking about how you can how you can nurture those creative pockets to make because that if you don't take care of them, they will choke in all the admin of the big companies. But if you take care of them, they can actually thrive.
Okay. So enterprises, usually with all the systems and procedures, they can choke those pockets versus the entrepreneurship and small businesses what everybody talk. So
Exactly. And then they were talking about, they were actually literally doing that. They would take a group of people and put them in a different office, and say, just do your thing, almost like a startup, and say and they would have different systems, they've had different rules and different, and if it worked, they would bring it into the big organization. And they were talking about it as a mutation, like an organizational mutation, that if it works, a mutation is nature is like that. If it doesn't work, you kill it. But if it works, you bring it into the organism, right? And then you put it into
yeah,
the DNA.
okay.
So that's a way of thinking around how you can still make sure to have an innovative culture, even in a big, structured, organized organization.
So basically they just isolate them from the
Yeah,
culture
literally, they
to
literally
protect them.
isolated it. but also metaphorically. So both physically and metaphorically isolated them.
Metaphorically
Because
isolated.
if it went sour, if it went bad, they don't want to risk the whole organization, right? So it's a test, and it's testing the mutation in a lab almost. And if it works, bring it in.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So this when it comes to the innovation, and I have studied a course with Professor Clay Christensen. I'm quite sure.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
And through his theories and set of theories, he was challenging at some time is that a big company with all the profit formula and the business models, according to his research and papers, every time a company tried to reinvent themselves from internally, they collapse. According to his papers,
Okay.
but he witnessed cases where they just, how I would say, they exported the new idea or the new business model into a new company that soon this new business model and this profit formula grows and take over while the market already shrinks for the first one. And this is how businesses move their business model rather than to reinvent it and try to work the same two business models within the same structure. What's your
Yeah,
interpretation?
but I also think, I mean, we should be a little bit fair. There are a lot of big organizations that have been able to reinvent themselves quite impressively and over again sometimes. So it does happen. Usually we are not so impressed by it because it might happen slowly over time. But any company that's been around for 100 years has, by definition, reinvented themselves because the world has changed so much in 100 years.
It makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. Awesome. So we said that innovation thrives in pockets in the enterprises, right? And you have seen it protect its pockets, growing pockets, and by that definition. But what really do you think that the top reasons that opposes creativity in the enterprises that always claim, let's do creativity, we support creativity verbally and internal marketing, but the actual thing they are not. What are
Yeah.
the top reasons that you think it's really withholding into creativity?
I asked that question a lot in my workshops, and it's interesting. People think it's one answer, but it's not one answer. There's actually many different answers that you get. One of them is actually hypocrisy, that that the leadership does talk a lot about innovation, but then they are not supporting it. And it's like basically, it's like if some person says something and then they don't do it, you lose trust in that person. It's the same. If an organization talks a lot about innovation, but then they're not supporting it, the talk becomes, sorry to say, bullshit, right? And people lose all interest in it because they say, yeah, they're just talking about it. So that's actually one of the most common ones. Of course, fear is always there. Fear of doing a mistake. I remember I did one speech for the future leaders of a bank in Asia, and the leadership was there during that training. And the group, they wouldn't answer my questions. They were so afraid to give the wrong answer. They rather just sat quiet, even though I was just asking a simple question like, do you think you are creative or not? They wouldn't even answer a question like that. They were terrified to say the wrong thing. So fear of mistakes, fear of repercussions if you do something else. But also the more unexpected one is, for example, bureaucracy and rules. Because if you are a really creative person, too many rules will kill your soul, right? And if you are that kind of a person who just says, I just want to do it, and then there are so many rules you have to follow, not only does that kill your creativity in the moment, it kills it for a long time afterwards too. I was once doing a speech this was also for a different bank in Singapore. How many centimeters the socks you are wearing should be.
The socks,
The
how many
socks,
centimeters?
the socks, the lengths of the socks were regulated in a rule,
Oh my
which of
God.
course is stupid, right? You should just have one rule that says in this company, we dress respectfully and professionally. That's it. You don't need to specify the lengths of the sock. But if you constantly need to keep track of all these tiny little rules, there's no space for your mind to run free. It's like a dog that is held on an extremely tight leash. It can't run free.
I agree to that. So hypocrisy, fear, and too much regulations, right?
Yeah, those are examples that come up very often. But there are actually there's more than that, of course. Lack of passion, lack of meaning or purpose or passion. It's like we don't know why we're doing this. Then why should we innovate? Too much organizational change. So the creativity is all about trying to position yourself politically to get your new position because they're constantly changing. So too much focus on internal reorganization and politics will direct people's creativity onto those issues instead of solving customers' problems. There are many.
There are many. There are many. Type. Let's shift the discussion a little bit about, because this is interesting about raising kids. I have this perspective that you just cannot be creative at work and uncreative at your life. It doesn't work like that because this 9 to 5 thing doesn't imply who you are. If you are a creative person, you can be there. I know, of course, systems can put some guardrails around your creativity. So I'm very interested in what you said about raising creative kids and talk about creativity within kids before joining the job or the market, the job market. What do you think?
Yeah, I actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to share a little bit, maybe more from a professional perspective, because I was once interviewing a woman in Australia, and she was very creative in her private life. She was doing pottery and expressing herself, but then at work, nothing happened. Like she was so stuck in her work, she couldn't innovate. And she called the pottery, she called it her creative outlet, because finally that's where she could be creative. But then I said to her, like, why don't you reframe that in your mind? Instead of thinking of an outlet, because an outlet flows out of you, why don't you think about your pottery as a creative inlet? Because it gives you energy. It gives you positive energy to do the pottery. Now take that positive energy from Sunday and when you're doing the pottery and bring that into work on Monday and try to use that creative energy also at work. And she did that, and it worked brilliantly for her. So I think a lot of people say, oh, I can't be a creative at work, so I have to be creative outside work. I think that you're doing yourself a disfavor by thinking like that. Like you said, we're one person. We should try to get creative energy anywhere we can, and we should try to maximize our own creativity.
I like that. I really like it. Well, since we're back to the professional life, I'm quite sure that you have met leaders now about aside of the enterprises that talks a lot about how they support creativity and all that stuff, but actually they are not.
Yeah.
Why do you think this is happening?
The higher up you get in an organization, the more, unfortunately, the more afraid you are the more focused you are on trying to do the right thing because you're trying to protect your position. For many, that's how they look at it. Unfortunately, because the ones that do, I was once interviewing one guy, I think this was in Holland, and he was talking about how his creativity had changed from a junior manager to a senior manager. He called it junior creativity and senior creativity. And he said, when I was a junior, I had to come up with all these ideas to impress my bosses, and but the higher up I become, I realized that now it is not my job to come up with the ideas. Now it is my job to make sure that the people working for me are creative, which means I'm not supposed to sit in a room and come up with all the ideas. I'm supposed to go into a room and leave the room with people feeling empowered to come up with ideas, which is a different kind of creativity. It's going from being a player to being a coach, right? You're not actively on the pitch anymore. You're coaching your players, to use the metaphor. So senior creativity is not about coming up with ideas. It's creating an environment where people themselves come up with ideas. And it has to shift your mindset because it's so easy. It's kind of similar to the parent thing. It's so easy to give the answer, but no, you need to nurture other people's ability to come up with answers because that's their job. Your job is different now.
Interesting. Well, I do understand that leaders have to make the space for others to come up with ideas, but does that mean that they have to stop putting ideas? What's your take on that?
It doesn't mean they have to stop. Of course, actually, they shouldn't stop.
They shouldn't.
Because a lot of people will look up to the leaders and they will act the way the leader acts. So if you look, for example, at founder-led companies, that has been successful, like IKEA or IKEA. Like IKEA was built on the fact that the founder was extremely creative in challenging everything, and the company would take those stories of Ingvar Kamprad, the founder, and they would spread them in the organization and say, look, this is how crazy Ingvar Kamprad is thinking. If he can think like this, you can also think like that. And so they are using the stories of the leader to encourage other people. And that is a very important job of a leader, is to make sure that these stories about him or her are being spread, because people copy the way you lead. If the leader is afraid to take risk, the people will be afraid to take risk.
Makes sense. Makes much sense. Do you think is it easy or hard to flip the mind of non-creative leaders to make them leaders, to make them creative again?
I actually think it's very easy. I used to live in Singapore for almost 20 years. And Singaporeans are extremely good at rote learning, right? They always win those PISA exercises, the students, but they're not known for being creative. And I lived there for many years, and people said, oh, Singaporeans, they don't know how to create. They just know how to learn new things. I mean, they just need to copy learning. But my experience working with Singaporeans is that it's kind of almost like a switch. The more you have these people with a lot of knowledge, but they don't know how to combine the knowledge in novel ways. But you can just switch that. It's like turning on the creativity switch that they didn't know that they had. And suddenly they can now combine all their knowledge in a new way. That's the power of human creativity. Everyone has it, but not everyone has flipped the switch. That's kind of, if you bring it down to the most profound reason for why I do what I do, is I want people to turn on that switch inside of them that makes them more creative.
Okay. Well, I usually ask people in workshops and other places, do you think creativity is a natural gift, or just some people are born with it and some are not?
Yes.
Most of the time, people say they are just special gifts for some people, and
Yes.
most of us as humans are not creative.
Yes.
So I asked them, what do you think the root property, the unique property that is required for someone to be creative? I did a lot of research on that, and my conclusion was curiosity.
I agree. I totally agree. In my workshop, I have a big section on curiosity. It is by far the most important aspect of creativity is curiosity, for sure, definitely. But curiosity can also be taught, or it can be inspired.
Okay. Well, when I ask them back, do you think that we are born, when people are born, do you think very few people are born with curiosity? Like when you go to a classroom, most of the kids are just sitting down there doing nothing, while few kids putting the fingers in the electricity outlet, and they say no. Most of us, right? All the kids, they never ask questions. So the question comes, next question is, and here's to you. So if we are born, most of us, like 99% are curious, right? With curiosity, deep curiosity.
Yes.
But when you look at graduates, I would definitely say the curiosity ratio is very low.
Yes.
What happens? What happens?
But as you said, we are all born curious, and then some of us lose it. Think about it like a plant. All the plants are in the sunshine, and they're all growing. And then you take some of the plants and you put them in a dark room. Of course, those plants are not going to thrive, right? So the curiosity is killed by parents, by school, whatever kills it, right?
Right.
But then if you take that plant out into the sunshine again, it will start growing again. And unless, I mean, as long as you're a human being, you have curiosity inside of you. It's kind of like saying, like if you've been in love and then suddenly you have a heartbreak, and for a moment it feels like I can never love again. That's how it feels, right? But it doesn't. It's not true. After a while, you can find love again. And if you lost your curiosity, it doesn't mean you lost it forever. It means you lost it temporarily, and you can find your curiosity again. Actually, the English word for curious comes from cura. Cura is the same word for the same root as the word care.
Okay.
Which means that which you care about, you will be curious about. So if you're not curious right now, it's because you don't care about something. So you need to start caring about, getting interested in something, caring about something. And if you do, you will get curious about it. And then you use that energy to become curious on something else.
I really like that. Yeah, because you cannot really, you cannot be curious about something you don't care about.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't care about it, you won't be curious about it. Like, I don't care about Bitcoin. I'm not curious about Bitcoin. It doesn't mean Bitcoin is right or wrong. It means I'm not curious about it, so I'm not studying it. But if you are curious about something, you will. That's the whole idea. That's why we go down the rabbit hole. That's why Alice in Wonderland went down the rabbit hole, because she wanted to know what was there. She cared about what was there, and she was curious about it.
Very, very interesting, the concept relating care to curiosity. And it makes much sense.
Yes.
For that. All right. So if leaders are afraid and they're not caring enough that curiosity is there and it's easy to turn it on,
Mm.
why don't they accept bold ideas when the system is there? They just turn it
But
on.
okay, good question. But they shouldn't accept all bold ideas. The job of a manager is to say no to 99% of all ideas, because we don't have the resources to do all ideas. I use a comparison like a bar when you do high jumping. If you lower the bar to the bottom, everyone can jump over it. Fine. Okay, good. But is it fun? No, it's not fun. And you need to raise the bar so that I mean, if you raise it too much, it's impossible to jump over. Everyone loses interest. If it's too low, everyone also loses interest because it's not fun. Everyone can do it.
Makes
You need
sense.
to raise the bar so it's high enough so that it's a challenge to get over it, and only the best get over it. That's where the bar should be. So a big part of being a boss is to say no and to challenge people's ideas. People get it wrong. It's like it's like saying to a parent, you should say yes to everything a child says. That's not a good parenting. You should say yes to the right things. And your job as a manager is to know what is the right thing to say yes to, and also to push the people to raise their own bar so that their ideas are on a higher level. It's a big part of a manager's job is to make sure that, say, you basically go and say, these ideas are not good enough. We need better ideas than this.
Well, I
But if you kill
understand.
all ideas,
Yeah,
then the people would stop caring.
I agree. I agree to the concept that the manager doesn't have to agree to all ideas for lack of resources and everything else and alignment with the strategy. But what I have witnessed is that when managers and leaders start judging ideas to accept them or not, the way they are judging the ideas basically for business feasibility and viability. And I see sometimes, in my opinion, just it's a great idea. Why don't you just take it? And the thing they have against is the financials, just the idea to kill it based on financial. Do you think this makes sense?
I think, especially in the time we are in now, where the world is changing so quickly and new technologies are coming in, it as a manager, you need to practice your ability to actually see where the world is going, right? Because you might kill this idea on an outdated world view that this would have been too expensive. Maybe that's built on the fact that it would have been too expensive, but now new technology makes it cheaper to do what someone wanted proposed before, right? The way Elon Musk has reduced the cost of going to space, right? If you say, let's put up 30,000 satellites around the world based on what it used to cost to send a satellite to space, yeah, that wouldn't make any sense. But now that the cost has gone down, it suddenly makes total sense. So a big problem for managers is that their worldview is stuck on what the world looked like 10 years ago, maybe even 20, 30 years ago. The famous Swedish speaker Hans Rosling liked to show how people gave answers on how the world looks based on what they learned in school when they were children. Like sometimes, even if you ask people today, how many people live on Earth, a lot of people will say 6 billion people because that's what the number they were told when they were in school, and that's not the correct number anymore.
Very interesting. It's all about memory.
It's all about it's about questioning your knowledge, making sure your knowledge is up to date,
So you can judge differently and
so
say
that
no.
you can judge the idea based on today's parameters and not yesterday's parameters.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. You said that creativity most of the time is being shaped by the professions and what we do day in, day out, rather than your type or the culture. but
Well, actually, not yeah, both, right? So,
both, right?
culture, religion, personality, family, profession, all of these will affect, and then we combine them. You get you get your unique creative uh, uh, process.
Mix
Yes.
process
Mm.
creativity. So what was the most shocking finding culturally that you've been all over the place, all over the planet? I think that Mars is the place they didn't visit yet, but all over the but a
Yes.
culture that you have got that one or two times shock culturally that you found, wow, this is very shocking that this initiates creativity or ignites
Yeah,
creativity.
I went to North Korea because I looked at it as the least creative country on the planet, and I wanted to study the least creative country on the planet. And I
Okay.
didn't think I was going to learn anything about creativity from the North Koreans. But it
Mm-hmm.
turned out I got a very good insight in how to think about creativity when I was there. I won't tell you what it was, but I will share that in the workshop. But
Okay.
uh, I really like the fact that you can go to a place where you think there's nothing I can learn from them, and then totally have to reevaluate that insight. It
I
shows
like
that
that.
you should not make up your mind about anything without first doing research on it.
Definitely double down on that. Well, and you made me so curious about the workshop, but of course, yeah, I will put that till that happens. All right. Um, so we have covered kind of the professional environment, the enterprise, the small business, and all that stuff. Let's hit it a little bit again on raising kids, school, and universities. Do
Mm.
you really think that the current education system helps innovation to thrive, or does it choke innovation?
I think the current education system haven't fully adapted to the possibility of how people should learn. Uh,
Hmm.
I think there's a golden age for education that has already started, but most schools are not doing it. I know for sure my kids' schools are not doing it. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to do my part of it to but to use, I mean, AI is a lot of things, but AI is one of the best things that AI can do is to help you learn. And we are just using 1% of that today. But when we start using, I heard a funny, for example, I heard there's a daycare center in Sweden where they put ChatGPT on voice mode, and the kids can go and talk to it. 5-year-olds, they will never stop asking questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
never. It was
Yeah.
talking.
And
Yeah.
they will ask questions until the adults say, I don't know anymore, because they don't want to answer. But ChatGPT never gets tired. So here you have 5-year-olds asking questions to the computer, and the computer never gets tired. It just answers back
Mhm.
all the time. Imagine a generation that grows up knowing that you can always ask and you will always get an answer. Imagine that generation, and then teach that generation to also look for answers, which is the second half of creativity,
Yeah,
which AI is also great at helping you find the answers. And I think we're going a very beautiful future. We're facing a beautiful future, but unfortunately, most schools and most parents are not utilizing this technology even remotely close to what the potential is.
I agree. But let me wear here the black hat or the opposing
Sure.
opinion about the AI. I would say, wearing that hat, that now people are offshoring or offloading their thinking to the AI. So most of the people, instead of using the AI to help them think, they are just think this, do that, think of this presentation, what do you think? And just throwing the question, not out of curiosity, rather than to do the job, like
Yeah.
do the report, and they just take it in schools or university or business and give it to
Yeah.
the manager or teacher.
I
Doesn't this kill
we're
creativity?
we're I see your point, but we are doing a big mistake here. We have to
Yeah.
understand that AI is very new. So we haven't fully understood how to best use it. So if you give someone a tool and they don't really know how to use it, they will use it in the wrong way, right? Yeah, if you
Yeah.
give person an excavator, he's not, and you don't give him any training on it, he's not going to use it in the most effective way. Or
Very
when
true.
we invented the calculator, you could say that by inventing the calculator, people became worse at math, because before the calculator, people could do 52 times 6 in their heads, and now you can't do that anymore. You just because you just do the calculator. But I think no one can argue that humans are now doing worse math than they did 50 years ago because now we have a calculator. Of course, some people will be lazy and they will enter 5 plus 5 in a calculator, but I don't care about them. I care about the really smart people who are now using their calculator to do math we could only imagine doing 50 years ago when we did not have the calculator. So teach people how to use the AI in the right way, and it will be an amazing tool. Don't teach them how to do it in the right way, and it will be a terrible tool.
Well, taking your example of the calculator, I think you would agree with me that back in the days before calculator, most of the people were able to do the calculations on their head or on their baskets, right?
Yes.
But moving forward now, most of the people are not able to do that, while just very few at the top of the pyramid are utilizing calculator for advanced calculations. Do you agree?
I agree, but then again, you could argue, were the people then smarter? Are we using our brain power for other things instead of figuring out what 56 times 56 is?
Okay.
I can use it to figure out what create. I would be very worried if we use the tool, because here's the thing that is different with the calculator and AI for thinking. People love to think. People love to be creative. It's one of the things that makes us the most happy. So people are not going to let someone else make them. You're not going to outsource your creativity to an AI because it will make you more unhappy. Nothing makes you happier than having a good idea. Nothing, except being in love. So why would it's like saying when we invented the tractor, people are not going to buy shovels anymore. Yes, that is true. Or people are not going to dig with their hands anymore. Their hands will shrink and they will not be tough anymore. Who cares? Like now we use excavators and we build bigger roads than we could ever build with our hands, and we use our hands for other things. I am absolutely convinced AI is the biggest creativity accelerator that we have ever invented. We just haven't realized it yet, so we're using it in the wrong way.
Wow. Well, I do have tons of questions, but I know that your time is not infinite. And also, inshallah, when you come to Egypt, we're gonna have our podcast together.
Yes.
So I will save a lot of questions for there. Um, this basically, I was so excited to meet you again and to reconnect with you and share some insights about the coming up workshop. So if someone asked me, what am I going to learn in that workshop? What's your answer to that?
The short answer would be, I actually wrote my first 2 books about the internet in the 1990s. And then I switched to creativity because I realized that people didn't need to learn what the internet was. They needed to learn how to think in a new way so they could figure out how to use the internet. And this is the same thing with AI now. So there are 2 parts to this workshop, as you know. One part will be to try to understand how to think around AI. And then the other part is to recalibrate how we think about opportunities so that we can figure out how to use the AI in the right way. So we will balance between understanding AI and understanding how to think differently. Because it's not enough to just learn what AI can do unless you can then also rethink what you could do differently now. And that is the most important part. In the mid-1990s, people didn't miss the opportunities of the internet, not because they didn't understand the technology, because they didn't understand how the technology would change their business. So it's never been more important to rethink how we look at the world, our business, ourselves, the way we work, the processes, than now, because suddenly we can do them in a totally different way.
So the workshop is going to help me think better or think in a different way, explore other ways aside of the AI, before the AI, and then how to use that to magnify or leverage that.
Exactly. And then at the same time, get a better understanding of what you can do with AI. And we're doing that, the thinking aspect, the AI aspect, the thinking aspect, the AI aspect, and then you combine that at the end of the workshop, and you say, I have now a better understanding, and I have a better way of thinking how to use those things in a new way. And it's a thrilling time to be alive right now when it comes for the people who have the ability to see these opportunities.
I agree. You're always bounded by your perspective, right? If you're
Mm.
gonna choose to be afraid and believe that this is the end of the world, I don't think this is an exciting time for you to live if you chose that kind of
Well,
or
if this is the
choose.
end of the world, we really need to be creative.
At least we need to be happy, right? Instead of being sad. Why would I spend the last moments or the last few months or years if it's going to end to be sad? It's a weird choice for me.
Exactly. I think Einstein was asked, what would you do if the world would end in an hour? He would say, I would spend 55 minutes analyzing the problem and then 5 minutes solving it. So we
Wow.
definitely we need to identify the new problems that are arising, but we also need to identify the new opportunities, and that's even more important.
Wow, I really like that. Well, I can be more excited to workshop, inshallah, in a few days, in 10 days or so, and to welcome you again back now in Egypt. And hopefully, inshallah, you're going to enjoy it. And most of those who are going to attend to, I'm quite sure they're going to feel very happy, satisfied, and find it very useful.
Yeah,
Um,
I really look forward to it too. I really look forward to coming back. It's been too many years.
yes. Well, thanks, Frederick, for your time today, and get excited and hyped. You're going to do, inshallah, damn good time in Egypt, Bismillah. So
Thank you so much. See you soon.
see you soon, Frederick. Thank you so much.